everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Today is part two. I almost said two, like two is four. Part two of my super fun conversation with our very own Dr. Tachi from Indie Soup Media. We are continuing our deep dive into Queen Charlotte and all of the things we loved about it and why it made such a great story. I really hope that you enjoy. Talk to you soon. Well, enjoy the video. He literally can't handle the day-to-day of being a human, much less a king. We don't, like, the American Revolution is not even mentioned. No. And I found out something very interesting. And I don't know why. Maybe it's not interesting, but it kind of made me go, oh yeah, that makes sense. So the 4th of July in America is very, American independence, blah, 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 all that sort of thing. The British don't talk about it. They don't even really, like, the American Revolution and like losing the American colonies is just a very small blip on their historical radar, right? Like it's crazy to me that, and for the record, the American Revolution, and as flawed as this country is, we are not going into that because that is not this show. Yeah. Not this show. But the American colonies were the only British colony to raise a rebellion and win. Ever. So, you would think it would loom a little larger in their history considering, but okay, anyway. But like the American Revolution is not mentioned at all in Queen Charlotte, so we don't like get any of like that whole war stuff, because that's not the focus of that show. It's all about Charlotte and George's story.
And I'm glad, because I think that adding that in would definitely scatter the plot. And I don't think we need that.
We did not. I don't think we ever needed it. What I like is that the show is very insulated. It's a very insular world.
Yes.
That we're dropped into, and I love it that way. I don't need to know about everything else going on. I don't care. But we see this montage of them like growing older, and then comes the last scene, and Charlotte is who she is in Bridgerton now. She's older. She's talking to her grown kids, and they're talking about, you were never our mother, you were the queen. And she's like, anyway, that's my job. And maybe she could have been more of a mother if George had been able to be more present as the monarch, right? Maybe she could have played more of a role as a mom to them, like to be a mom, right? But anyway, then she has this conversation with her kids. We find out that her oldest son and I believe her oldest daughter are both expecting, roughly the same time. The oldest daughter is actually who gives birth to Queen Victoria, I believe. And that is who ends up, So then Charlotte has this conversation, and then we follow her, which I love these panning shots, like where they're walking like through the palace, which I'm just like, how did they build that set? Can that be a real palace? Good God, it's amazing. Amazing. And she's done up in all of her Queen Charlotte fabulousness, right? She's got the wig whipping up on her head, and it's a masterpiece as always. And then she goes into the room where George is an older man now, played by a totally different actor, obviously. And he's still writing on the walls. So she gets his attention, and then what happens?
So are we talking about the very end?
Yes.
So at the very, I don't know, we have to go back a little bit, because there's this thing that he does, and I don't know if he's under the bed when he's doing this. He has this thing that he does where
that's where he feels safe.
So he's under the bed, right? Yeah. And he feels safe there. And when Charlotte was young, I think she discovered that he did this, and she went under with him to join him, to comfort him. So that last scene we see is him under the bed, and she goes under to join him, and they're kind of laughing and, talking together, which is really beautiful because it ties all of that together, that through all, it's really for better or worse in her case. She's like, look, I'm not leaving, because I think at one point she did entertain going back to Germany. I think
she was like, this is some bull, I'm out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. She did
Yeah.
entertain that. But, the last scene really shows, look, I'm in this thing for better for worse. I'm going to get under the bed with you. Whatever the
Yeah.
issue is, we'll work
Thank
it
you.
out.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because in my excitement to skip ahead to the beauty of that moment, like I didn't set the stage properly. So thank
Yeah,
you for
no
doing that.
worries.
So if anybody hasn't seen Queen Charlotte before, so as we know, George is traumatized from being abused by his grandfather as he was growing up. So where he finds solace and safety is in the quiet dark under his bed, because then he's not being assailed by people who need and want things from him. And the first time he goes under the bed, Charlotte is like, yo, what are you doing? But then when he's like, he tells her it's quiet under here. And she's like, well, then I'll join you. And we see that over and over again through their life. We see them going under the bed to have those quiet moments. And so and actually that last scene, she goes under the bed and
Yes.
invites him, right? She's
Yeah.
like, you're writing on the walls and you're in your own world, but I need to feel close to you right now. And I think it might have had something to do with the fact that our kids are finally having kids, right? Like, that's awesome. And then, so she's like, George, join me. And she winks at him and she gets under the bed in
Mhm.
all her finery and her wig and slides under the bed. And then he comes under the bed and they just hold hands. And just
Yes.
look at each other. And it's just,
It's wonderful. It's like, even if that's not what really happened,
I don't
you
care.
want that to have really happened. It
Yes.
is such a wonderful moment when writers are able to tie moments from earlier in the series back to that moment. First of all, you have to remember that all of that happened. So that's just a testament to the writers.
It really is. And it speaks honestly to the importance of consistency and congruency throughout a story.
Yes.
Whether you're reading a book or you're
Yes.
watching this television series or you're watching a movie, right? It really speaks to the need to keep consistency and congruency. Now, that's not to say characters don't change and grow, because they should, and she does. George might stay a little bit the same other than just getting older, but Charlotte goes from being this feisty, slightly naive girl who has like an ideal view of marriage to being a feisty, mature woman with a very seasoned worldview.
Yes.
And yet she has lost none of her wonder with her husband.
Yes.
And I think that's what's so beautiful.
It really is. It's like, really, even if something gets on her nerves, if it gets to be too much, because it is a lot. If you remember when they were taking not a portrait, but they were getting themselves painted, the
Yes.
painter came in and she was like, no, he's not going to come out, right? Because he was just going through a lot, and it got progressively worse despite the cockamamie treatments. His condition got progressively worse, but just that whole thing, despite the fact that he would get on her nerves or whatever, she goes back to that moment of meeting him as she's trying to go over the wall. That's what it seems like to me. If she's thinking something in her head, she's like, this is still the same George that I met there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you 100%, which again goes back to the writers, like how they created these strings for us to follow, and then gave us most of them wrapped up in this like really beautiful bow. And the ones that weren't wrapped up, like Lady Danbury's situation, right? We understand going into season 3 of Bridgerton, it's the way they're doing Bridgerton with the Queen Charlotte interjection. It reminds me kind of the Marvel universe, how like you watch the Loki series because it ties in with, I don't know, part 523 of whatever they're doing. There's things that tie it together, and I feel like that's what Queen Charlotte did. Is it was a very nice interlude
Yes.
between season 2 and season 3.
Yes.
But it really informed so much of what happens in season 3.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Especially with Lady Danbury.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about her. Go ahead.
So, first of all of these actors are just exquisite actors, but they're also exquisite looking. She is just gorgeous, just beautiful. And this whole she's married. She's unfortunately married to
an old man.
And yes, we'll say it that. But a curmudgeon. I mean, they found obviously there was a lot of makeup and things involved. His teeth were awful.
If you look at a picture, and I should have found one for this, dang it. But if you look at a picture of the actor who played him, he's like actually a really good looking guy.
He's beautiful. But I was like, wow. And I mean, that's true acting too, because it's everybody wants to play, or most actors I'm sure want to play, it's easy to play somebody beautiful, but somebody that is not despised, but despised. I think she does despise him. That's difficult. So he did a great job with that. So she is married to a much, much, much older man, and she's just basically biding away her time till he dies. That's what she's doing.
Yes, and she did produce a son.
She did.
She produced a son. And so I had done some reading about how people were a little upset because they felt like the younger Lady Danbury really the marital relation scenes were really more akin to the R word.
But that's what it was.
That's what I was saying. But if you take it in the historical context, it was, but it wasn't. Like, she was an unwilling participant, but not.
There was no consent.
Right.
She didn't
have
want
that back then.
No. You had no agency over your body back then.
Right.
You barely have agency now, but not to talk of back then.
Correct. Yeah. And so I was trying to be like, again, it goes back to looking at like what you said at the beginning of our conversation about looking at things through a 21st century lens, as opposed to a 19th century lens, almost an 18th century lens, right?
Exactly.
Because they were not very far removed from the 1700s. But again, women were pawns. Lady Danbury's father married her to Danbury for whatever game. Oh, he was a gambler, wasn't it? It was to pay off his gambling debts. See, that's how women are property. Women are bargaining chips to be able to use however men wanted to use us back then, right? So Lady Danbury's father married her to Lord Danbury to pay off his gambling debts. And so she knew she had a duty to produce an heir. She did. And then she's kind of started to play Lord Danbury. Like, she was like, she knew how to appeal to his ego, to his vanity. And then when he finally died,
they celebrated. She celebrated with her. What would they be called? A housemaid? Like
a lady's maid?
Lady's maid, yeah.
Lady's maid, yeah. She celebrated. They were.
And it's sad, but it's also funny that she was like, Lord Danbury. And when she realized he was dead, she was elated. But it almost felt like she was released from her prison. And that doesn't mean that he was a terrible person.
Yeah, he wasn't beating her.
No.
Or anything, but like, he was very tight with money. Anytime she wanted to do something, he was like, well, how much is that going to cost me? Right. He was not a man who entertained a lot. So like, she didn't get to have people over, so that there was at least a break in her routine. The only time she really got a break from him is when she went to go see King George's mom. But there was a whole thing about like land and titles going on, something with that.
Yes.
Which is also like a power struggle where women were used as, currency, basically. But that's when Lady Danbury got to be friends with Queen Charlotte, and theirs is a true friendship. Like, they don't have to call each other Majesty and Lady and stuff like that when it's just the two of them in private. They are just Charlotte and Damn it. What's her name?
Oh, Lady Danbury's first name. I
Okay,
can't.
I'm looking it up right now. I'm looking it up right now. I'm looking it up right
So
now.
as you're looking it up, I don't know if you were about to say this, but this is how, well, she
Agatha.
wasn't Bridgerton, Danica?
Agatha.
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 I love that name for some reason. I don't know why. Every time I have to name something like my mannequins, the name is Agatha. So there was, before Lady Bridgerton
Mm-hmm.
became Lady Bridgerton,
Right.
I can't remember what her last name was,
Right.
but she's a bit younger than Lady Danbury.
Yeah, I would say probably 7 or 8 years.
7 or 8 years. Yeah, maybe up to 10, but probably 7 to 8 years
Yeah.
younger. And I guess as they were promenading, didn't she run into her and the father when they were little, when she was, younger?
Yeah, so there's a whole side plot going on.
Yeah.
We learn, not only do we learn more about how Lady Danbury got to be Lady Danbury and how she's made her way in the world since the death of her husband, because she was absolutely like, I will never get married again. That was some nonsense. I'm not doing that. And she is true to her word. She raised her son to be a gentleman and a scholar. I don't think we've met her son yet.
No.
I don't know. Doesn't matter. We meet him as a little boy, but we haven't met him as an adult yet. But after her husband dies, she meets Violet. Well, I don't know Violet Bridgerton's before she was Violet Bridgerton.
Right, before she was a Bridgerton.
Right. So she meets Violet's father, and she actually has an affair with Violet's father.
Yes. And this was unknown.
Oh,
for a while.
Yeah.
Until
I was like, oh.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I love the scene where, so one of the things that Violet's father used to do with her is make these crowns, these really elaborate paper crowns. And so one day he comes to see Lady Danbury and he has a crown for her. And that's when, everything happens. But you could tell she really had strong feelings and strong love for him because she kept that crown. Yes. In fact, she kept the crown on her mantle.
Yes, because we still see it we saw it in season 2, but we didn't really know what it meant.
We didn't know what it meant.
We learned about it in Queen Charlotte, and now in season 3 we see it, and that's when Violet
sees it too.
Violet sees it too, and she's like, "Oh,
exactly."
And then all the pieces come together for Violet. But we have to remember too that, when we're talking about like women being married, we're not talking like by 25, if you weren't married, you were a spinster, right? So these girls are getting married at like 17, 18 years old. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Lady Danbury was forced into marriage when she was 17, right? By the time she was 20, she probably her son was born. And that means by the time she was 21, she was a widow. I don't know this for facts. I'm speculating. But then if Violet's a little bit younger, so she's 21, that means Violet was probably like, I think you're right, 10 years, maybe like 11 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she is quite a bit younger. But again, as adults, they formed a true friendship, because you see them in season 3 be like, yeah, I got you forever, right?
Yes. Wow.
So it speaks to the writing. We have these ties. We have these themes that get started and how they carry through, which, if anybody who really loves good stories, like, you have to really think about well, you don't have to. That's just me, because I'm a nerd like that. But the consistency and the congruency of how things fit together.
Right. And in the film world, we also call that continuity. So the fact that you have that crown that is there into you, and you have to be very thoughtful about these things, because you have to make sure all those same pieces are in place when you continue on, or it won't make sense. Even if they thought we wouldn't notice, and we didn't. But the fact that you can go back now and say, oh, is that what that was? Right. The continuity is stellar.
Well, and I really, and so speaking to that continuity, so there's a scene in season 3 of Bridgerton, the scene I was just talking about where Lady Danbury and Lady Bridgerton are talking, and they're basically like, yeah, we're besties for life. No man is ever going to come between us. Like, that's never going to happen. And so as the scene ends, the camera pans to the crown sitting on the table. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful to me.
It is.
I love it.
It is a perfect soup of good storytelling, good writing, good cinematography, good acting.
Yeah.
All of that makes it feel like you're there. And the hallmark of everything good about this series is that you don't pay attention to any of these devices per se. You're not taken out of the world of the story because something is bad. And that's what bad writing, bad cinematography, etc. do. They take you out of the world of the story and you don't live the story. I think with this, we live the story.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I feel like, especially because you're right. The writing is spectacular. The acting, the choices that the actors made, which I didn't really pay much attention to those things until I got to know Dwayne Johnson. He's a Hollywood actor, and he's had reoccurring roles on Bosch, and he's been on Suits and all kinds of things. And he's the one who helped inform me about that sort of thing, about the choices that actors make on, like, it even comes down to tone of voice, facial expression, the way they turn their body, their hand, instead of coming up, might stay down. Like, there's all these little things that go into it that we just don't think about. But also, at the risk of being a little soapboxish, we hear a lot about taking arts and music out of schools. Mm-hmm. But when Hamilton debuted on the Disney Channel in 2020 during the pandemic, it dang near broke the internet, right? Like, we wouldn't be able to enjoy Hamilton on Disney Plus or Bridgerton on Netflix if we didn't have these creative outlets for kids.
Exactly.
The kid Shonda grew up to be Shonda. Mm-hmm. Right? Like,
yeah,
we'd have been able to do that if we didn't have these creative classes and offerings in school. Who knows? But I just really want to stress that the people who put their creative energy and efforts and all of that talent, like, thank you, because good God, it's so good. It's so good.
I echo your sentiments exactly. I mean, this is why it's so important to have these things in the schools, or I should say, to have programs after school that deal with these things, that engage children in this way. Because honestly, I'm not going to lie. Yes, obviously we all had American history, and we all learned about the story of Alexander Hamilton, who was, but how many of us actually read the book? It's the fact that that Lin-Manuel Miranda read his book and said, I could do something with this, but it takes a special type of person to do that. I wouldn't have read the book on my own, except for, if I had to do it for school. That's not something I would have done.
Did you read the book?
I did not.
I did read the book.
Okay. So I mean, you're a special type of person. I did not, because I had no interest in that. But somebody who is a history buff, who really, you can see yourself in that story, right? He saw himself in that story. It's
when he was reading it, he had just In the Heights had just closed on Broadway, and whoever had taken over was like getting ready to like make it into like a traveling kind of a thing and licensing it out. And he was on vacation, and he was reading Ron Chernow's biography of Hamilton.
Yes.
And he looked at his wife, and he's like, you know what? This is a hip hop story. That's how it started. It took him 6 years to write it.
And because of that, just like because of Bridgerton and Queen Charlotte, people are interested in knowing about the actual historical figures.
Yes, absolutely. Because, I ran right to Google. I was like,
exactly. I was like, oh, really? So I'm looking at these things, and I'm looking, and especially with Queen Charlotte, it's interesting because she is a noble person of color. Mm-hmm. And it's not that it's uncommon that it did not happen. I mean, if you look historically, probably most of the aristocracy has some sort of color running through them.
Well, I think they had to, because when you think about world trade, there was trade going between the Middle East and into, northern parts of the continent of Africa, and then across the Mediterranean and into Italy and Greece and Spain. And then, from there, the Silk Road was in business for, I don't know, a couple thousand years, right?
Exactly.
That goes all the way through Europe and then, through Asia. And so how could there not be people of mixed heritage?
There always were. There always were.
100%.
World trade, and I'll say exploitation. Trade and exploitation.
All that.
So,
because we can't forget, the whole transatlantic slave trade. That is not this show.
Right. Exactly.
But let me tell you, anywho, that part. So, Dr. Tachi, thank you for joining me. This was, I hope you had fun, because this was amazing for me to talk with you about this. So
I'm like, oh, we're done. I almost don't want to stop. It's so much fun, and I'm so thankful and humbled that you invited me onto your show.
Well, thank you so much. So just everybody knows, Dr. Tachi, again, is one of the founders of Indie Soup Media and Indie Soup Network, which is where you are viewing this show. And I cannot recommend highly enough that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. How many subscribers do you have now?
We are at 15.2 thousand.
Yes.
Yes.
And let me tell you, the shows that are on there, I mean, mine, whatever, but I'm just saying, like, there is such quality programming. I mean, I learn something every time I watch. So just, if you're looking, and when does I know this is technically, we're recording season 2, but when does season 2 premiere?
Next week, next Monday.
Oh, I better get on it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I cannot thank you enough for being here and talking about Queen Charlotte, because I love this series, and, I love good stories. And so thank you.
Thank you.